Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey miners, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. Wednesday morning, we've got a few more production updates out today from Core Scientific and Hut 8 Corp. In addition to that, some big news from Bitdeer that we're going to be covering in today's podcast, not to mention yesterday's meeting with David Sachs and our outlook on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners for the tail end of the week. Now, before we get into it, take a second, hit the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comments section below if you're currently holding any of these companies, how you're feeling about the Bitcoin mining sector overall, and your outlook for the remainder of 2025 as it relates to the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's podcast. Okay, guys, so here we are Wednesday morning, a very event-filled week. We had Ben on the program yesterday talking about some of the updates at Bitfarms. We've seen some big political updates this week from the new crypto czar under Trump's administration. That's where we wanted to kick off today, Anthony, talking about yesterday's meeting, essentially the first public discussion of their Bitcoin strategy, crypto policy under the Trump administration.
Yeah, absolutely. This happened after our podcast yesterday. David Sachs came on and discussed the next steps regarding Bitcoin, but actually, if in an overview, it effectively disappointed the market. Bitcoin price dropped, miners prices dropped literally as soon as he started talking. So maybe not as bullish as the market wanted to hear, but I still feel fairly bullish. The message is still coming out there that they're looking to go for the Bitcoin reserve. I don't know the length of time that will take, but when you consider now 11, 12 states in the US are already formally going through the process, it won't be that long before before Congress has to go through the same process as well. So as I say, another step forward, and probably quicker than a lot of people expected. I mean, this is his third week since the inauguration, and he seems to be working overtime to get things done. So glad to see we're getting some positive news out. But as I say, the market wasn't as happy. But then again, the market has been a bit erratic in the last week or so. The Bitcoin price has effectively been yo-yoing a little bit, trying to find that trend, hovering around the sort of like 99, 100,000 mark. We need it to stay that level and move upwards.
Yeah, we certainly do. And you're right in your comments there, Anthony. The Bitcoin price did sell off virtually immediately as David started his speech. On the plus side of things, they did confirm they are evaluating a Bitcoin strategic reserve. So that was great to hear. But as you say, traders maybe a little bit upset there weren't any concrete plans or timelines associated with that meeting. Now, the other big headline we got yesterday, as an avid Costco shopper myself, they're actually installing ATMs, LibertyX ATMs across all of the US locations in Costco. Now, this is a big step, Anthony, I think just for visibility. We talked about ATMs being one of the first on-ramp methods for Bitcoin back in the day. But the number of people that go into Costco each and every weekend with their family, they do their groceries there. I think this is big just purely for the visibility and the amount of people that are going to be talking about this.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember the days when there was a number of ATMs you could buy Bitcoin, especially in the US. And this is just, again, it's another form of adoption. There are, still places around the world you can buy Bitcoin via an ATM. This was positive. I mean, Costco, one of the biggest retail outlets worldwide. We have Costco even in Southampton where I live. So yeah, big news again. Big news update.
Just one more domino continuing to fall on this global adoption trend we're seeing now. If we move over to Bitcoin, some of the key metrics here, as you said, Anthony, it's been hovering in that $99,000, $100,000 range, pulled back slightly this morning, trading just above $98,000 right now. We wanted to provide an update on both the network hash rate and difficulty. So the next adjustment coming up this Sunday, expected to go up 4% in terms of difficulty. Now, we did see a pullback in January, a welcome relief for the Bitcoin miners. Can you talk to us a little bit about what this difficulty increase means for the Bitcoin miners themselves?
Yeah, January we saw an initial increase in the difficulty, and it came down for the last couple of weeks, which basically meant the month was flat in terms of hash rate. If you look at the 7-day moving average at the start of the month, 7 moving day average at the end of the month, it was pretty much level that period there. So, but again, this is now, another difficulty adjustment, another increase, another potential, all-time high effectively. And this means that Bitcoin miners across the world will be effectively producing less Bitcoin with the same hash rate. It has impacted the mining companies that we look at significantly. We had a halving last year, and you could look at the Bitcoin reduction outside that halving and look at the last 12 months. The difficulty is effectively it's like another halving to the miners. So it really does impact. Yes, we're seeing miners grow hash rate, and that will compensate them for that. So by growing the hash rate, they'll grow more Bitcoin and be able to keep up with the Bitcoin hash rate. But many miners that we cover haven't been able to grow hash rate in the last year, never mind, in the last few months. So, that's where the challenge is. Less Bitcoin. Yes, the price is going up. And if you look at the price action that we've seen over the last 12 months is probably getting close to parity where the difficulty and the halving effect have taken a reduction in amounts of Bitcoin that miners are actually able to achieve. So there's been some compensation there in terms of revenue, so that they're still getting close to the revenues they got last year, albeit because Bitcoin price is, like you say, 98, 99,000. But I think we're expecting it to push further than that. The price needs to outperform the difficulty to make it at least profitable for the miners to keep on producing Bitcoin, because without the miners producing Bitcoin, it doesn't, you still need that process take place, as well as the audit process that they do as well. They audit the blockchain. This is not just about producing Bitcoin. There's a lot of things that the miners do there. They're constantly auditing every transaction, so that no fraudulent transactions can take place. The miners are doing a really good job, but they need to be paid for that. So, this difficulty going up there, let's hope the Bitcoin price can equally go up and compensate them from a price perspective.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the importance to the blockchain infrastructure as well, the auditing process. Another phenomenon we saw just recently, the mempool activity was actually sitting at zero, meaning there was no transactions pending on the Bitcoin network. Fees were super low. So really a testament to the use case or versatility of Bitcoin. Immediate transactions, very cheap. I saw some people sending large sums all around the world for pennies on the dollar there, Anthony. Now, the other thing you bring up, these moving averages, we look at that when we talk about difficulty, also when we talk about hash rate. So you've put out a forecast by end of year, you expect us to be around 1,000 exahash per second. I had said higher at 1,200 exahash per second. This is another very important metric. We saw a spike in January. It seems the global hash rate has pulled back, but an important comparison you bring up, and we talked about this in the Mike Alfred interview, Anthony, the ratio or the speed at which the price of Bitcoin increases compared to the network difficulty and network hash rate. Mike Alfred said we're really waiting for that point at which Bitcoin price spikes and the other metrics aren't able to keep up. That's where you start to see the big moves in the miners. In terms of the global hash rate, what are you seeing here?
Well, the global hash rate, if you look at the average global hash rate at the moment, and we look at it, it's not worth looking at on a day-to-day basis because it's so volatile. But if you look on a 7-day moving average, it's 826 exahash. Now, bear in mind at the start of 2024, it was closer to 500, so we did see it increase by approximately 60%. But we also saw the Bitcoin price rallied by well over 100%, I think 150%. And with the halving, you can get to understand what I was trying to articulate earlier about, how the price has basically give the miners some comfort while we've had a halving and difficulties there. But it was a few weeks ago. The last time I looked a couple of weeks ago, it was 780 as a 7-day average. So it is still increasing. Yes, we're going to have these dips, and your slide there or chart there shows going back down towards 600. But we see that on a daily basis. We see that it can be 800-900 and back down to 600 on a daily basis. But it's the moving average that you want to pay more attention to. Who knows where it's going to be by the end of the year? I just was optimistic in the fact that over the last three years we've asked miners, we've asked analysts, and no one really gets anywhere near where the hash rate's going to go. So it's a whose guess is as good as the next person's.
Yeah, it's interesting relationship between all these metrics. So essentially, to put it plainly or simply here, the more machines on the network, the higher the global hash rate. That increases the speed at which the blocks can be found. We're targeting 10 minutes per block. As we saw on the difficulty slide, we're in the 9 minutes, so below that threshold. As a result, difficulty goes up, makes it harder on the miners to find those block rewards or earn revenue or Bitcoin in the process. So all very interconnected, and something we like to talk about on the channel. As you said, Anthony, nearly as impactful as the halving last year, just in the difficulty adjustments alone.
Absolutely. And if you look at two of the miners, Marathon and CleanSpark, Marathon have got close to 7% of the network, and CleanSpark are now approaching 5% of the network in terms of, global hash rate. Those of, CleanSpark reached 40 exahash in January, and Marathon are over 53 exahash. So, you're talking about miners getting a sizable slice of the network, and therefore, they'll still be able to, with production, still be able to maintain good levels of Bitcoin each month, providing they can get machines switched on. And we saw a tale of two stories yesterday with regards to CleanSpark and Marathon in terms of Bitcoin produced with the hash rates. And Marathon again probably disappointed a little bit in terms of their production numbers. They had a great set of numbers in December, and January is just basically not performed. Now a lot of it could be down to weather conditions. That's something out of their control. Whether not just necessarily the weather conditions affecting facilities, the weather conditions will affect how people use energy. And if the domestic supply is being used up to warm houses, the Bitcoin miners will switch off to make sure that demand doesn't get interrupted. And so, that's out of their hands, to be honest, unless you're in an area. And we had a good example of that with Patrick Fleury came on the podcast. They're in New York State, and the demand up there is nowhere near the actual energy provided. So, a lot of the time, TeraWulf can probably keep mining, irrespective of what the weather conditions are, because the domestic demand, even in the worst times of the year, or when it's required mostly, doesn't impact miners as much as maybe certain other areas, maybe in Texas, where they do have to switch off regularly with regards to like the ERCOT 4CP program, as an example.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up about the geographic differences for some of these operations. Now, speaking of specific miners, Anthony, we have a few more production updates out today. We'll kick it off with Core Scientific. Now, Core is one of the few miners currently green on the day. On my chart here, I see CORZ and IREN currently green. They came out with 256 Bitcoin in the month of January. Didn't sell any of them, and continuing to build this HODL Bitcoin reserve we're seeing on their balance sheet. Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now.
Yeah, and interestingly, Core Scientific started to include the Bitcoin they earned from their hosting business. Now, the hosting business is down to 1 exahash, but they showed that in December they earned 18 Bitcoin from that service, and in January they earned 17 Bitcoin from that service. So, a nice bit of hodl there. They sold no Bitcoin during this month. They sold 79 last month. And if you, they don't put the hodl in there, but if you look at how much Bitcoin they've actually received in the last 2 months, take away the 79 they've sold, that gives you 503 as a sort of start point. They might be slightly higher because they may have had Bitcoin received from hosting in previous months that they've not sold. So, but bear in mind, when we had Adam on the podcast, he was quite, making everyone aware that now they got rid of some of the covenants that was preventing them from hodling Bitcoin. They were going to start a strategy to hodl some of their production. Well, in January they hodled everything, so that's a good sign. In terms of operational hash rate, that's started to come down. Now, bear in mind, Core Scientific are in the process of refurbishing many of their sites to get ready for the HPC contract with CoreWeave to commence, which is in 2025. So we were at the 150 megawatt site at Denton. That was flattened and that's being rebuilt now for HPC. So the miners from there have had to go to other sites. Obviously, as month and month, when you're moving sites, you're not necessarily going to have every machine plugged in at every time there. So, their sort of self-mining hash rate has come down, 1 or 2 exahash over the last few months. And probably part of that, although it's not on the update, would be to do with the fact that they are effectively, moving miners from site to site to make way for HPC, which is going into, I think, 4 or 5 of the sites. I think if I remember rightly, Adam's saying. So that's probably the reason there. They've got 161,000 machines as self-mining. The mining efficiency at 24.5 joules. That's come down slightly as well from last month. And we know that that's going to come down further when they take receipt of the chips from Block, who are producing new mining chips for them, which you just received this year. That will affect about 15 exahash. So pretty much most of Core Scientific's fleet is going to be overhauled. And, that once that happens, the efficiency will improve. They're already achieving a really good low-cost energy rate. So once both of those have been ticked, that their margins will be good. And bear in mind, their margins are good now. I think if you look at the last quarter results started coming out today. We'll get CleanSparks later today. But if you look at the last quarter results that were brought out for the period ending September the 30th, Core Scientific had probably the best mining margins across the whole board. So, even with the fleet not being as efficient as many of their peer miners at the moment, their energy prices and the fact that they keep control over some of their costs, which they've had to do. I mean, let's not hide the fact they were in Chapter 11, effectively just over 1 year ago. So they've only been out of Chapter 11 just literally 1 year and a couple of weeks. And so, a lot of lessons learned, and it looks like, with the results that they're bringing out regularly now, the lessons, are being learnt, and everything seems to be going in the right direction. In terms of the hodl, I've had to estimate 503, as I already mentioned, and that's got a valuation as at the end of January of just under $53 million. So that's nice to have in the treasury. As an asset class that can be utilized, it can be used as a lever to borrow against. You can sell the Bitcoin to raise cash to pay for facilities for whatever, as they're going through this process now of ramping up for this mega CoreWeave contract, 500 megawatts of power to CoreWeave, with an additional about 130, 140 megawatts of additional ancillary power to make that project work there. And they're still on the lookout for another contract. I think they've got another 135, 150 megawatts of power available for HPC. So watch this space for further updates.
Yeah, most definitely. Core Scientific giving you the full smorgasbord there, including a hodl now. And that's very encouraging, Anthony. Adam Sullivan, widely reviewed as one of the top CEOs in the space, very well respected by his peers. So to see them implementing that hodl very bullish for me in terms of Bitcoin and core scientific strategy. Now, talking about HODL, the next one is Hut 8. They have over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Now, they did lose a ranking position in terms of that overall HODL this month.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of Hut 8's production, bear in mind their self-mining is probably the smallest part of the business at the moment. They have a hosting business, which at the moment 7.7 exahash, and they also have a managed service business. And the difference between those two, hosting business means that you'll own the sites and you'll host mining machines for other for customers. Managed services means that you don't own the site, but you go in there and you operate the site on behalf of the owner, and you receive a fee as a management service fee for doing that. So that's just a quick explanation of what they are there. Management services about 9.4 exahash. If you look at their self-mining as well, they've got about getting on for 22 exahash of hash rate that's under their management effectively in total. Now, we did see their power come down. I think the previous month it was at 1322 megawatts. Now it's at 1020 megawatts. And if you remember back in December, they highlighted that the Ionic deal had been cancelled, and effectively they were no longer managing that process on behalf of Ionic. So that was part of their managed service business there. So about 300 megawatts looks like it's been removed from their total amount of power under management, which is now still over a gigawatt. They also highlighted in their update the work that was going on at their Vega site, and they put a nice photograph in there. That's due to be energized within Q2. That's a 205 megawatt site there. And they're expecting, a number of minor deliveries for that initial fleet upgrade. They've also not announced where, but they're in advanced AI data center discussions. And although it has been released by local communities in the press there, Hut have kept tight lips about this, and maybe they're just being a bit careful, don't want to jump any guns. And if you remember last week, we had the DeepSeek announcement, how that rattled the market. Maybe in hindsight, it was a good thing to hold that back until everything's worked out, and then they can announce it with all the I's dotted and T's crossed effectively, and join the likes of TeraWulf and Core Scientific, who've already announced significant HPC contracts on their part. In terms of the HODL, you're quite right. The HODL, although it's gone up to 10,208 and has a value of $1 billion and $73 million effectively. CleanSpark, with their production in January, managed to leapfrog Hut 8 and become effectively the fourth largest company with the largest HODL in the treasury. Hut 8 are now the fifth largest, but so still significant amount there. And once they get that new fleet upgrades in there, and if they can get their hash rate as planned up towards that 25, we'll start seeing their significant monthly Bitcoin being mined, and that HODL can grow quicker than it has been doing over the last few years. Because I remember at one point, I think they were the highest. I think they had more than Marathon at one point. And so, because they haven't grown self-mining in the last 3 years, that HODL hasn't really grown. It stayed pretty much flat where it is. They did make a big purchase in December using the convertible note to do that. But other than that, it's sort of been the Bitcoin they've mined the last few years has been used to meet their operational requirements, to put it in a certain way.
Yeah, most definitely. And interesting, as you mentioned, they've held that Bitcoin for years and years on the balance sheet through this last entire cycle. Now, you also bring up the hosting activity that Hut 8 has. Interesting to hear Ben Gagnon yesterday talk about Bitfarms starting to think about hosting. The next article we have here from Bitdeer talking about an acquisition in my home province, Alberta, Canada, also involved in the hosting space.
Yeah, and Bitdeer have talked to us many times on the podcast. For them, it's been a very, very good service. You look at the margins, they've got four different distinct business models at the moment, and that's before you get into the actual production of miners, which will be their fifth business, and AI will be a sixth business. So they've got a number of businesses. But the hosting for them brought in really good margins, especially in the bear cycle. When Bitcoin price dropped, they were still getting the returns because it's contracted. For hosting, you get paid a fee on a monthly basis. So that worked out really well for them. But yeah, this is an update today. They've made an acquisition of a site in Alberta, 101 megawatts. And effectively, this will, according to their update there, make Bitdeer the first fully vertically integrated Bitcoin mining site. So that's pretty much where you cover you provide the energy, you provide the machines, you provide the facility. You just covered every bit of the jigsaw puzzle there. They've got every part of that process covered now. So this is going to be interesting. It was an all-in cash transaction for the 19-acre site of $21.7 million. And as I say, 101 megawatts. Yeah, it just adds. I mean, bear in mind, Bitdeer have already got a pipeline of over 2.5 gigawatts. So in terms of growing that, yeah, this has probably added about 4% to their total power pipeline. They've got a significant amount of pipeline, and I'm not too sure of how many companies are developing sites in 2025 as much as Bitdeer are doing. They really are developing a lot of, I would say, big sites, bigger than this site here now. They've got some 200, 500 megawatt sites that they're developing concurrently in different continents, never mind, in the same country. They've got facilities in Norway, facilities in Bhutan, facilities in the US that they are concurrently upgrading and building and getting ready for energization this year. I don't think this other miner got as much into that, and they're also planning to grow significant hash rate because they're producing their own mining machines now. And yes, they've got an order book for I think about 7 exahash of miners are already on the order book already, but they're producing some in the region of 35 to 40 exahash of miners. So there'll be a lot of mining machines for themselves to grow their hash rate up, heading towards 40 exahash, during 2025. So looking forward to see that hash rate improve with the new Seal Miner A2 and A1 machines going into their sites with the really good efficiency from what we've seen from testing, certainly comparable and competing with the Bitmain T21 and S21 machines.
Most definitely. The Seal Miner, Anthony, your favorite. I was wondering maybe you'll get a tattoo of the Seal Miner one day, or yeah. Who knows? We'll see how they perform. Maybe version 4 if it's under 5 joules per terahash. Hey, just the logistics you bring up there, though, Anthony, moving all these machines, facilities all over the world. Truly impressive from Bitdeer. Hitting so close to home now in Alberta, I may have to pack up the McNallie Money Roadster and take a trip up there, Anthony. You were talking about coming to Canada. We may try and do some of these sites. There's actually a fair number in BC and Alberta spread near to where I'm located here. So another great update from Bitdeer, continuing to add to that pipeline. I've seen a number of funny posts on X talking about Bitdeer with the elephant in the room, this pipeline that they have access to. And as you say, Anthony, these aren't empty fields. These are actively being developed, coming online this year or next. So very exciting time at Bitdeer. Let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding shares in Core Scientific, Hut, or Bitdeer, and your outlook for the market here as we head into the final few days of the week. That's all for now. We'll see you back here tomorrow.